This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we are live on our Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels. And with Schmidt Show, is that what you call yourself, Schmidt Show, as your artist name?
Mm-hmm. I used to have a few other ones, but they didn't work out as well. Just didn't fit me.
So this is your new persona today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we want to do is, this is the first time you've been on the program, and we do have a sponsor before we get into everything, but we are going to show a YouTube video in its full entirety of your work, and then we'll get into the questions. But we do have a sponsor, and we like to keep the show free, so we do have one sponsor right now. And Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android, and it picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them back to you in a natural human voice. So it gives you a listenable web. And you can browse articles you choose and start playing, and stop scrolling, start listening. And now they have podcasts as well, and you can explore trending podcasts from over 40 countries. And our podcast, the Fam Electric Ghost podcast, is on there. So download and use Newsly for free by going to www.newsly.me, or use the link that we have on our actual podcast, and use promo code GHOST2021. That's Ghost 2021, and get a free 1 month free subscription. So we got that out of the way. So we want to just kind of cue up the video we have for you. Now the song title is called "Missing You My Love," and we'll get into like the whole song and everything about the video. But we want to get into this to show you what Schmidt Show sounds like before we actually interview. So that will give people a good kind of frame of reference. So we're going to get into that right now. Let's start it, cue it up, and then we'll talk about it on the backside. Check me So that was Missing You, My Love, and we're back to our interview with Schmittshoart. And yeah, I like that song. You can hear me, right? I can hear you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back. Cool. What's cool about I'm a big fan of new wave. I'm a synthesis and modular synthesizer enthusiast, and so I kind of pick up some like new order sound to that. And at least that's what I hear, but because that's where my head's at. But I always appreciate folks that use synthesizers in that kind of 80s way or 90s influence.
Right. For me, that's my favorite stuff because like I grew up listening to lots of funk and stuff like that. That was kind of like more 70s, 80s funk. So like, but it was also mixed with like a lot of heavy synthesizer stuff. So like it always from a young age really influenced me, and I love the way that they sound and everything. And Bootsy Collins is like my bass savior. So like
funkadelic, yeah. I mean, I kind of totally grew up on that. I mean, I'm at 54, so like I'm a child of the 70s.
Mm-hmm. You actually got to experience it.
I got to hear it like from my older brother was 7 years older than me, right? And I'm a child of the 70s, and my dad was into like Earth, Wind and Fire and Stevie Wonder. He had songs in the Key of Life on 8-track, right? And I was a kid, and he was like playing it over and over, and I just like got so inspired by the sounds I heard on that record because it was all like Yamaha GX1 Dream Machine and CS80, and those are like really crazy synthesizers, and how Stevie used them, and then later listening to Funkadelic and Parliament and how like Bernie Worrell, like his work on the Moog on the Mini Moog, in Hammond B3s and stuff is just phenomenal. And so I just grew up with that kind of level of like electronic music, Keith Emerson, Genesis, Pink Floyd, Pete Townsend on Barbara O'Reilly, stuff like that. That's kind of what I grew up, but so let's get into that video. So is that a video that you worked with a director, or did you self do that?
I had to make it all myself. The song and the video I made while I was stuck in quarantine because I was exposed to COVID over, last winter on my birthday, no less. So like I got quarantined from my birthday for like 2 weeks. And so I had nothing to do. And I was, I couldn't see my girlfriend or anything. So I was like, I wrote the song, I was, at the time I was listening to
not
lots
being able
of
to see your girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of
like,
the title about not being able to see people because you were in quarantine,
mm-hmm,
or not being able to specifically see your girlfriend.
I would say it was more more not being able to see my girlfriend than anything. But I figured, it has a kind of like a broad thing that you could, people can.
It could be anybody. It could be your family. It could be your girlfriend. It could be your wife. Your significant other. So yeah. So do you have experience in doing like kind of computer animation? Is that something you was going to school for, or you just decided to do that for this video?
Well, a little bit. I didn't go to school for it, but since I was homeschooled, like all I had was like an hour of schoolwork a day, and then for the rest of the day, I pretty much just spent working on my own projects. And so I still have some of the old, like I have Toon Boom, and I have 3D Mandelbulb, which is the 3D fractal program that I used to make this video. Yeah,
it's like polygonal type graphics. Those are like polygonal graphics like used in video games and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's how we get like all the smoothing stuff and water and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm old school. Like I started on a Texas Instrument, like old school in like 1979. It was like a PC, you had to hook up to a black and white TV, and it had like sprite graphics using like Pascal and Fortran. So I'm old school. I can do COBOL. I'm crazy. I'm old school. I'm a mainframe guy. That's my day job, but yeah. So yeah, I get computers because that's why I'm a synthesis, because like I figured like I want to do something fun with computers when I'm working with actuaries all day, which is mind numbing. So I need to do something more fun. So let's get into into why you got into music. Like I always ask all the guests I talk to, like when did you first get into music? Like what age? Is it something that you always wanted to do or you were inspired to do? Like what age did you start?
Well, it's kind of hard to define an age that I started because like I grew up within a small like little house church thing, and everybody like they give you like a little instrument to play or something like that. So ever since I was small, I've had like a little drum or something that I've been banging on and just
Mm-hmm.
playing for forever. But my dad, when I was about 10, 11, my dad was like, okay, so it's time that you need to learn how to do play an instrument because he's a multi-instrumental artist person. So at the time, I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is just extra homework. You're making me learn how to play the piano and the violin. What is this? And
Yeah.
so he forced me to do that for a few years. And eventually, like, I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do it my own way, which is like I got on my computer and I got GarageBand out. I'm like, I'm not going to, I don't want to constantly practice Bach and stuff like that. And so I started making my own stuff and basically just fucking around with GarageBand for about a year, because I wanted to make music for the background of video games that I was trying to program at the time, because I was trying to teach myself, basic computer stuff. So made that, and then eventually my dad was like, "Here, have this computer. It has Logic on it." And so I got onto Logic, and like I started playing, and I was like, "Oh wow, these are actually really good. I can make like professional sounding songs now." And
So did your dad kind of show you Logic, or you let you kind of figure it out yourself?
basically he just kind of gave it to me, and he didn't pressure me at all because he saw how bad it was like when he tried to pressure me to learn
Oh,
an
so he let
instrument.
you kind
And
of
like,
discover it on your own.
yeah, and he like, and every once in a while he would like be like, "Oh, come into my office," which was like the extra room that we had, his studio and everything. And he would be like, "Oh, can you help me figure out how to do this EQ or whatever?" Because he liked
Yeah.
like having my ears since I was way younger and I had less ear damage. I could like help him with like balances, hi hats, and stuff like that. And so I learned how to do EQ and stuff like that just from working with my dad and him just kind of encouraging me and be like, "Oh yeah, well, what do you think of this?" And then I'd be like, "Oh, that's cool." And then I would go and try it on my computer because I'm like, "Oh, I've figured out how to do something new now." And so it just kind of took off from there. It was about like
But I see
14,
that you got
15.
like you're into guitars too, right? You play guitar?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I love
So
guitar.
I think it's always cool when you're a singer songwriter to be able to do that. I'm kind of a frustrated guitar player, so I figured out how to get my Roland to actually sound like a guitar. So I actually don't play guitar, but I have a lot of guitar like music in my sound. That for like last 20 years I spent all this time trying to get my Rolands to sound like Gibsons and and
I love it.
and Fender Strats and Telecasters, and I just I mixed them with Moogs to try to give it like an analog feel. So is this something like my brother learned guitar when I was young? We had a garage.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had a band, and he picked up the guitar and he could figure it out. And then I picked up a synth and I was able to figure it out. But I always wanted to play guitar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so I still am inspired by tons of guitar players like Jimmy Page and Hendrix and Clapton and all the great like lead players because I think it's just something that's cool to put into your music. But today it's like we're not in a rock focused world. Our
Mm-hmm.
world is like more hip hop, EDM, techno, trap, other things. But I'm still a big fan of that. So it's cool like when you integrate guitar into stuff. So we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
more about that. So how long have you been working on your own music once you got that DAW? When did you would say you started putting together stuff that you wanted to put out or play in front of people?
I was about 15 when it started because I got into psytrance because my brother showed me Infected Mushroom and Paranormal Attacks. So I was like, oh, I really like this. And so I
Mm-hmm.
started making stuff on my computer, and I wouldn't tell my parents that, like, what it was about, usually because I had like kind of cryptic titles because I wanted to be all psychedelic and cool and edgy and everything.
Yeah.
So, but then I would go to the library since I didn't have internet at my house. I'd go to the library and then I would upload my music to a YouTube channel. At the time, I
Oh,
was known
cool.
as Tina Noctil, and but from 15 to 18, I started getting more into subscribers like that. Then I started noticing people were literally taking my songs and then like re-uploading them under like a different artist name, but keeping the same song
Yeah,
title. And
stealing your
so,
stuff.
and then that pissed me off. So I just deleted everything off my channel and just deleted the channel. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this again. And then 3 years later rolls around when I'm about 21. I'm still making music the entire time while doing it because that's just what I do. It's just my favorite thing to do. I like making music. It makes me happy. So, and then I was like,
Yeah, it's
I'll
just
try
good.
uploading it again.
Yeah, I guess the
And that's
problem
when I
is
did
on the net
Schmittshoart.
you do have a lot of pirates. I use different ways to keep like I'm a member of BMI, the Songwriters Association, professional guild, and then making sure you copyright and register your stuff through however you put it out. I see on DistroKid they have stuff like that. So I'm a SoundCloud artist, but so yeah, I just think like a lot of times people get into it and they don't realize the actual like negative side of the industry is that there are a lot of like people in the industry that will give you bad deals, take like 80-20 deals, 90-10 deals where they take all your work and make money on it. Or steal your work and make money on it. Either way, like a 90-10 deal is like stealing your work. But so yeah, it's just it can get artists. And I know a lot of artists, they get into it because they love music. It's like not that they want to be like in the top 20 or top 10. They do it. A lot of the people I interview are independent artists, singer-songwriters, producers that just have their own vision. They want to do it their way. They don't want to be on a major label. They do it because they love it. And I like to know people in that zone because I think that's where a lot of innovation is happening. And in the industry, because the industry likes to clone. And so they just like the next clone of Beyonce, the next clone of Drake, the next clone of whoever's doing what. And so if you want something new, you got to look in other places.
So true. So true.
So who are I think you mentioned like Bernie Worrell as a reference point, but I'll ask it a little deeper. Like, who are your influences and reference points as you started to get into? You did mention the other band, and I just want to get like maybe a list of like your influence to see how diverse or where you're coming from.
I would say first and foremost, my biggest influence is Bruce Cockburn. He's a Canadian folk artist from like basically he started in like the late 60s and he's still doing music now. But
yeah,
for like guitar work, he's an amazing guitarist, and like his poetry and the way he writes his verse is just cream of the crop. It's my favorite. And so those are like probably my biggest influences for how I want my music to feel and come across and be able to convey a message. But when it comes to style, I would say I'm heavily, as we were talking about earlier, heavily influenced by like Parliament Funkadelic and lots of different musical artists. Like I love Devo. I'm a huge fan of Devo. I'm part of like the same little cult that they're in. The Subgenius. Yeah, Church of Subgenius. It's fucking hilarious. It's great. And I also like Kraftwerk. Grew up listening to a lot of Kraftwerk. Lots of the foundational kind of people that were coming up with it, and like Tangerine Dream for my ambient stuff. Tangerine Dream is like my goal to sound like that.
Well, being a keyboardist, I'm big time influenced by them. Like Steely Dan, Tangerine Dream, Sun Ra, Davis, Miles Davis, like Bitches Brew. A lot of what I get, it comes from like jazz. Like so, Sun Ra is like my favorite jazz outfit because nobody knows who they are. And so they have they have a massive catalog, and like nobody heard it. Like everybody's heard Bitches Brew, but nobody's really heard Jazz and Silhouette or like Space is the Place. Maybe people know Space is the Place, but not a lot of people know it. But yeah, I think like you were mentioning like old school influences, like Joy Division is one of my biggest influences as like a new wave band. Because I mean they had like 2 records, but then they became New Order. But the initial song, like Disorder, is so impactful because it's like post-punk. It's got all this weird kind of Kraftwerk synthesizer in it that's on the low end of the song. And it just has this kind of punk aesthetic where the voice doesn't have to be pitch perfect, but it actually is very vital, what Ian Curtis was saying. And to me, it's always been like a big driver of what I do is like that kind of new romantic post-punk sound. Is where I come from, but it's interesting to hear that you would like Devo because it's coming from like the kind of same era, same concepts.
I would say another big influence though is Tool. Tool is probably at least lately it's my biggest influence because I've been really getting into the polyrhythms and the way that Danny Carey does rhythm. I'm trying like a new type of like for something a project I'm working on now. It's in like first it starts off in 5/6 time and then goes to
different time signature
5/4, and then it's got a bunch of different time signatures, but they all blend together because of the way that I set up the polyrhythm. But it's also electronic instead of just being metal like Tool. So I have like a drum and bass feel, as well as like this kind of weird new wave type of feel for the lyrics and stuff like that, the way I sing and stuff.
I do like I kind of grew up with like progressive rock, where I like the idea, like a band like Yes would start off in one key, one type of signature, and then go to these like, orchestral type structures where they have different movements, and they start off in one key, switch to another key, come back, and you can see that in Funkadelic does the same thing. They will go and do progressive funk, where they'll have lots of heavy metal, blues, rock, psychedelia with orchestral structures, because Bernie went to Berkeley, so he has all this orchestral stuff going on along with funk, along with rock. And so with Hazel, and then you got Bootsy, and then George Clinton coming up with the crazy lyrics and the voice changes, like Sir Nose, Sir Nose. Yeah, I love Sir. Well, that's where Josephine Electric kind of came out of the idea of Sir Nose and Princess Camille. Like I have an alter ego called Josephine that's totally influenced by Sir Nose and what Prince did with Camille. Because I use like Roland VT4s and VT3 voice transformers. They're actually synthesizers that change your voice in real time. And they used to use tape loops, but in backward tape speed or slow tape speed on an analog deck. Is how they used to do it, but I can do it in real time. But yeah, it's just, to me, it's just a lot of cool things you can do when you cross genre. If you go, you take a little punk, you take a little reggae, you take African rhythms, you take some, I think like everybody, a lot of people really, that know synthesizer stuff will always name check Kraftwerk. And it's very important because Prince's whole career kind of started with his like understanding of Kraftwerk and then turning it into the Minneapolis sound, like taking a piece of what Kraftwerk sounds like and then altering it to be in a funk genre, is really cool. And then Brian Eno's work with Bowie in the 70s, is really like key to, I think anybody who's into a synthesis, we'll get into like the core guys who did it, like Keith Emerson. And I always name check Pete Townsend because of his work on the ARP 2500 and the envelope follower on songs like Relay and Who Are You? The ability to run your guitar into the ARP and use the envelope follower, it gave the guitar this kind of up and down modulation, which is really key to that sound. Like it's a big Who sound, like something Townsend came up with. And it was weird because he's a guitar player, but a lot of people think he's like one of the best synthesizer players ever too, because the way he approached the synthesizer was different than the way Bernie Worrell or Keith Emerson or any of the other guys, because he's a guitar player first. And so he looked at the instrument in a different way. So when you look at like when you're doing synthesis, because you can play guitar, do you like take a guitar point of view, or are you trying to do like a pure like keyboard concept, or do you try to mix it?
This is the kind of the hard part to define, because like before, because for a long time I played guitar, but I was not good at it. Like I couldn't do bar chords. I could barely struggle with regular chords. I just would put on a little bit, like a couple riffs on a song, and that was about it. But recently I've been able to actually play more, and before my keyboard worked, and now it doesn't. So now I'm a lot more guitar heavy, and then like I'll play out the riff or whatever, the thing that I'm hearing in my head, record it, and then I'll go through, and then I'll have to like pretty much draw whatever the melody line is, because my keyboard barely works.
So okay, so you're doing it on the grid and the DAW. So you're using the DAW. You're using your DAW to do the grid work.
Yeah.
To actually, I get it.
But I use the guitar to come up with like the sounds and the melodies and how I want it to flow. So it does have a different feel, because when I'm playing on the piano, I'm used to doing like different chords, and like there's certain like kind of little lilts that I'm used to like banging on it, because I also like playing drums and stuff like that. So I'm used to very percussive kind of playing. And the guitar is a little bit more slidey, and
But the stuff on the guitar you can do, but it's hard.
Flow to it.
Yeah, you can't do it. Like I try to do guitar stuff on my Roland. And one of the cool things about Roland, they have this thing called a supernatural sound, which what it does is every instrument on my Roland has some things about it that actually are like what the real instrument does. Like, so if you play a wind instrument, it can do trills if you do a certain movement of your finger. The sound is
Okay.
programmed to have certain aspects. So if you do a guitar, you get the modulation wheel, it can actually do feedback. And then you can, if you hit the note a certain way, it can actually represent a pitch bend. If you hit like two notes together, like a flat and a major key at the same time, or a sharp, it'll actually figure, oh, you want to bend this, and it'll do it. So it's kind of cool that you can replicate some things, and you can add pedals and stuff to do other things that can control the sound. But yeah, it's just interesting. Like when you approach an instrument, you got to think about it. If you're doing winds on a synth, right? One of the whole things about a wind instrument is there's breath, right? A human being can only breathe so much. So if you actually
Mm-hmm.
try to replicate on the keyboard, you got to consider the fact that you can't just keep on playing endlessly, because a human being actually has to take a breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you're actually going to replicate like a wind sound, then you should probably know that you have to like stop and start like you were actually breathing, or maybe using the reed, and in the way you can use a reed or a mouthpiece on a horn, or is a little different than just playing the keys. So you kind of got to think about, well, how is that instrument really used, and what are the individual characteristics of it that I can kind of figure out.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
one thing that I love about synths is like now we can actually get to a point where we can like have
play with
organic
that.
instruments and actually make them, and like actually work it to where it actually sounds good it sounds realistic instead of it just being, back in the day when you just had very kind of MIDI almost sounding sounds, which
Then you
I
have to
like the
figure out.
sounds, but just.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I was talking to this other producer, and he was saying, yeah, you really have to think about, like, if I'm gonna have some strings come in, like, am I gonna do staccato? Am I gonna do breaks? Am I gonna do like portamentos and decrescendos? Like, I have to kind of think about like, well, how is it actually done, right? So if I'm gonna introduce that into my thing, and it's not a sample, and I'm actually gonna play it like on a Kronos or something, like I gotta try to make it sound like the way it would actually be played. I have that sound, but like, am I gonna play it right?
Mm-hmm.
In the way that instrument is designed to be played. So it's kind of like it's a learning experience as you introduce. Oh, I'm going to introduce a cello. Then you got to think about what would a cello player really do, right?
Mm-hmm.
What baritone sax guy? What's he going to do? Right. So as you have access to all these sounds, but then you got like, well, how do you actually really approach that sound in the best way for your song?
Mm-hmm.
So you said you use the DAW, and I think you said you were using Pro Tools.
I use Logic. I have Pro Tools, but it doesn't work on my
Logic.
computer anymore.
Oh, you don't like it? Yeah. So Logic, you like? I heard. A lot of people are into different, like Ableton and Logic and different ones. But so that is Logic is your preferred choice right now. That's what you're using to record.
Yeah, well, since I gotten used to it early on, because my dad had Pro Tools, but he's like, oh, that's why I had the Logic computer, because like, I don't need this anymore. Yeah, he got Pro Tools, got all the nice stuff, so like I got used to how Logic works. So now it's harder for me to like switch to Ableton, which is a completely different setup. I'm like, I don't know, where is everything? Like, how do I write this on here? Where's the automation? And it's completely different looking for me, so I just get lost in it. But it has great stuff, and the same thing with Pro Tools. It's like great instruments, great things I would love to use, but I don't want to take the time to go up that learning curve again just to figure out how to use my instrument.
That's interesting because like the DAW is kind of interesting. I knew somebody had Cubase and somebody has FL Studio, and each one has its own kind of workflow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of a hardware guy, so I've actually stayed away from them. I use like Tascams and Zoom like digital hardware recorders, and I kind of got into these like MPC type systems, like the Akai like MPCs, just because I like groove boxes, because they're like, it shows my age. I kind of grew up in the age of things like that. So when I was growing up, you had like 808s, 909s, and 707s, and actual like TB303s. And everything was a box, everything. If you wanted to do something, there was no net, right? There was no real PC that could do it. during the original way when I was doing stuff. So you use like a Tascam 4-tracker or a 6-track scene tracker with a box with like an 808 or some kind of groove box from Roland or Korg, and then you put it together track by track into a hardware recorder. Uh, and I just found like the way you like using Logic, I got stuck in that way of working because I like the freedom of just being able to track it however I want and not have a limitation in compression or anything. I can just record exactly what I want. If I can play it, I can record it.
Mm-hmm. See, that's my goal to eventually get, because like as much as I love DAWs, I prefer being hands on, but I just can't afford it at this point, you know. So I'm just
Yeah,
slowly
it's hard.
saving up and getting equipment as I can. But it's like I would rather not have to use my computer at all and just have equipment that I can just play my music on, you know, because like I can do things a lot quicker. I can get the exact sound I want if I have it hands on and I'm touching things. But if I have to like scroll through, click something, drag, and then like mess with all this stuff on the computer, I just lose the creative flow. It doesn't give you the
Yeah,
same kind
I
of
think
energy
that's
that you have with real equipment.
I think that's the thing. It's like the difference between a producer and like a musician, and then you have the kind of hybrid of being both. And I think in today's world, every musician's got to be like a producer too. But
Mm-hmm.
when you get into the DAW world, you spend so much time on the computer, and kind of like the way I do it, you see all this hardware. It's because I grew up like I like actually having that hands on, like on my Moog. If I want something to sound, I have all these dials and all these knobs, right? And I figured out what they do, right? But it's like
Mm-hmm.
I can just hands on without menu diving get my sound to kind of be where I want it. Like if I was on a
Mm-hmm.
Hammond organ and I'm messing with the drawbars, it's kind of like that. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like the difference. Like if you're playing on the organ, you kind everything's feel. Everything's with the pedals, everything's with the drawbars. That's how you get the sound. And I'm kind of like on a Moog, it's like the same thing. Like I got like a grandmother. It's kind of like a mini Moog. And you can just
Mm-hmm.
get to where you want to go in real time. And you just kind of mess with it and you kind of know what it does. And I just have kind of grown up, with this stuff. And that's the way I do it. And I know the world's different now. Everybody's on the DAWs, but I do like to do it kind of old school.
Mm-hmm. I think it's good to
Yeah.
know how to do both like that though, because that way you can
Yeah. It's
have
cool.
like,
Yeah.
if you're stuck in a gig and your computer's down, it's like, oh, I already know what to do. I got this. I know how to work with all this equipment. Or like, you know, if you get stuck in a studio with someone and someone's asking you like, can you make this sound? You know exactly what to do. But like if you get trained on one too much than the other, then you're kind of broken in the world of music, because nowadays they need someone that's super versatile to be able to like fix whatever problem that is that there at the time, you know. Like say if you're at a gig and like if you're or if you're DJing or something like that and your computer goes down, what happens if you
Yeah.
don't have that
What
sync
you
button
do?
anymore? You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta be
That's
able
the
to learn how
problem.
to
Like
fucking finish it.
where you got bands that are like they got so many backing tracks, right? If they're Ableton Live goes down, then they can't sound like they're supposed to. And I've
Mm-hmm.
actually heard of some bands actually having to cancel because their computers went down. And I'm like, aren't you a band? Can't you
Exactly.
play it? Like you can't play it? Like I grew up like going to see the Allman Brothers, right? I used to see like Allman Brothers play. I seen like Prince play live like 5 times, and I saw the Who, I saw Zeppelin, and it's just there's something about like seeing a live band and knowing they could just go off. And what I liked about Prince is that he would never play stuff the same way. I actually saw him in Paisley Park in his house, like in the studio he plays there, and he would just go and do all this crazy stuff. He'd just go off. One day he came out with like a 3-piece trio, just him, a bass player, and a drummer, and they did like this like Eric Clapton Cream like set, and it was like unbelievable. It was just like he just kicked it out and he just did all this new stuff. It was all new, never heard it before, and he's like I'm doing what I want. And it was cool that
Yeah.
he would do that. Like, he didn't play Purple Rain. He didn't play any hits. He just went through and played exactly what he wanted to do, which I think is cool. But yeah, I just think musicians should be allowed to kind of do whatever they feel like doing is the more artistically. And I was reading about you, like you said that you were going one direction and then you decided you want to do more like art. So maybe talk about what you mean by that. You like you want to kind of do things that kind of serve where you want to do aesthetically in your music.
Well, like I've been doing a lot more painting stuff like that since my dad was an art teacher, so he also taught me how, as well as music. He taught me how to paint and do drawings stuff like that. So I've been doing lots of paintings and stuff like that. But I want to find a way of like, because like Tool has their music videos, like they're all basically artists that can do different things. Like one does like film, the other one does puppets and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and I wanted to be able to like incorporate my art into my music and like have like a painting piece, like have like some way of encoding like the music into it, like have because I have my little system that I made for shapes and notes and stuff like that, because I just got bored one day and I was like, I want to find out a better way of writing down music than just normal notation.
Like a sound
So
painting.
I found something
painting.
exactly like, so I wanted to make it to where like I could do like geometric different shapes and like patterns and stuff like that for really cool like pieces that would be abstract almost. But if you look at it from my system, it would become like a melody that you could like, you could see like, oh, triangle
it's real,
like a third, major third or whatever.
Performance art. That's like performance art stuff you'd see like in New York, like at the old CBGBs. You had like nothing but performance art. Like the Talking Heads originally was like a performance art band, like an art rock band.
I'm a huge Talking Heads fan as well.
And like Zappa, like if you ever saw Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, like when they started, they do these happenings and they'd have like actors and performance artists and painters and film students running films like in the back on a big screen. I mean, Andy Warhol used to do that with the Velvets and the Exploding Inevitable, the Velvet Underground. They would run these shows and they'd have like Andy Warhol would have all these artists and actors and models all on stage and they're just there. And they were just kind of doing whatever to kind of just spitball it, but they would just, just doing art for art's sake, which I think is cool. I'm big much into that kind of San Francisco, New York scene type thing. Like you just go out and you just do it for the art.
And that's like that's the pure essence of it. Is if you're doing music or art or whatever, it should be an expression of yourself. It should be like trying to like put something out there that put something else into the world that we've never seen before. Do something to communicate, to other people about what's happening with you.
Yeah, I think it's like the best version of yourself. Because I knew a lot of guys when I started, right? Everybody wanted to just be a bar band, right? And just play like Leonard Skinner all night, right? And I'm like, I bored with that. I immediately got bored. I'm the keyboard player, and I'm like, okay, fine, I can play the stuff for these songs, but it's boring. So I said, I went off and got my own band, and we started writing our own stuff because, like, and it was harder to go into a bar and play like original material. People would say, Freebird. They started yelling Freebird. It's like, okay, whatever. But eventually, you go to the college scene, you get to the right scene, and people would dig you because they saw that you were doing something. And the main thing was that you had to believe in yourself, right? So if you believe in yourself and you believe what you're doing and your whole group believes it and you're just really into it, then it gets infectious. And then people are like, oh, wow, they're really like, I always tell people, like, if you dig yourself and you don't get like scared, just believe in what you're doing, the people will come because you're so into it. And it's true. If you really do your best, we're not trying to be somebody else. Your best you might be inspired by X or Y or Z, but it's your best vision of what you want to do, then people will pick up on it.
So true.
So yeah, I'm glad to see that's where you're going, because I think that's a very important thing today, is to kind of, as an artist, to know who you are. Because I think there's a lot of artists that are trying to emulate other artists, and that's fine if that's where they want to live. But I don't want to see the 100th copy of Beyonce, because like Beyonce does it the best.
right. Like, but I see a lot of artists that imitate. Like, I think that's a great idea for starting out. Is that you should have an artist that you like their sound and you try to emulate that. So that way it gives you practice or something to like have a specific genre that you're going for.
Learn how to play.
Yeah. Yeah, but after that, then you should go for like what you're feeling. But it's always great to have a kind of a role model of like, I like this sound, I'll practice this type of stuff, you know, and that way you can
It's kind of like the
use
blues.
them
Like
as
you
your
think of like
teachers.
a guy like if you think about the blues is very, you know, somewhat limited, but maybe not, because you can get Texas blues, you can get Delta blues, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Texas blues and the Delta blues are not exactly the same. And you know, you get like a guy like Stevie Ray Vaughan, you get a guy like Hendrix. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
they're coming from different places. Though sometimes
Mm-hmm.
Stevie could cross into sounding almost the same, but he wasn't quite the same. You know, and it's just a matter of like those blues structures have somewhat limitations, like any genre. There's like the blues has a limitation to where you can go with it. It's just kind of how you feel it is how you carry it off. So everybody can talk about the crossroads 1,000 different ways, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
but it's
So
still
true.
the crossroads. You're still going to talk about the same thing. But I think it's the same thing like in EDM. Like you could get stuck in the drop and then
Mm-hmm.
you're always doing that drop in the same way, or stuck in trap or stuck in trance. The cool thing is, what if you mix techno with trance? What if you mix new wave with big with like psychedelia? What if you take a little punk and put it into like a country song, like an outlaw country song, but it comes from a punk perspective? That's where I
Mm-hmm.
think the cross merging of things, and people will tell you, oh, you shouldn't do that. And when soon as somebody tells you shouldn't do it, then you should do it.
Dude, that's exactly how I think, man. When someone says, "Oh, oh, don't read about that," or you know, you shouldn't do that, it's like, do a little bit of research into this, find out why they're so scared of it, you know, because it's like that's usually where all the innovation is, where people don't want to go, where it's too difficult or it takes a lot of time. That's the stuff that, you know, kind of shows like who's going to be the artist to carry on like this new tradition, or are they going to fail? Are you actually gonna, you know, try the hard stuff and try to do something new, or are you just gonna keep on doing the
Yeah, I
same?
mean, because
Which
you think
I
about it,
have a
like
tendency to
people,
do that sometimes.
we live in the age of like the 2 minute, 2.5 minute song, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like the 50s. Today reminds me of the 50s because everybody's doing like these hook based songs, and sometimes they don't really mean that much, but they've got
Mm-hmm.
a, a memorable melody. And it's kind of like in the 50s, you had that. You had a lot of, there weren't really albums. You'd have if an album came out, it was a collection of all these low hits that you had, and they didn't really work. Maybe they worked because you had the same kind of sound with all your singles. But you know, until people started to actually get in the 60s and start creating albums that actually had structure, everything was kind of like that. So we're kind of in this age where things are more singles because everything's being driven by playlist. So everything is like kind of disjointed,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't get people doing full projects. Like, you know, you're starting to see some bands do EPs again, and then people that really have a vision will do an album, but it's really still like a playlist world. And
Mm-hmm.
I hate that limitation because I kind of come from the funkadelic tradition of like, oh, I have a 10-minute song, have a
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
15-minute
same.
song. you it's like, what's wrong with that? And the Eagles, they told them like, oh, you can't put out Hotel California. And Queen, they told them you couldn't put out Bohemian Rhapsody. And Skinner, they told them you couldn't put out Freebird. So the idea, like the industry always says, oh, that doesn't work, and it has worked. It just
Mm-hmm.
depends on if you're willing to let it come out. You know, there's some, you could have something that's longer than 2 minutes if you can
Mm-hmm.
actually make it so that somebody wants to listen to it. Um, but the idea that you can't have it at all, I think is very frustrating to me in
Yeah,
today's
that's something that's kind
industry.
of killing me with Spotify. Is like because since I'm very like I've been putting out singles recently just because I'm trying to get, you know, on some playlists because I'm trying to do that, trying to get more listeners and stuff. But I'm a concept album type of person. Like I like one of my albums is Evolution of Thought. It's actually one song that I broke up into 7 different parts because it's an hour long. And it's like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
goes through a
I get it.
classical feel and country, and it has like all this
Like,
weird
yes,
stuff, but it blends in together. But like no one's gonna look at
hard
the
to put
15
out.
minute song and then click that on Spotify, you know, because it's the 2 minute songs that get played really quickly and rack up lots of listens and
Well,
stuff
it's
and
because the
streams
way
because
they're
it's so
running
short.
their distribution to maximize the way they want to make profit, which is by these shorter songs. It's not
Mm-hmm.
an artistic decision, in my opinion, because there's a lot of really good songs that go over the 2.5 minutes. You know, they're 5-minute songs. They're 6-minute songs. They're very vital in the history of music. You know, if you go into the 70s and the 60s, the stuff is a lot longer. And so the idea that it can't be popular is total trash, because you can go back and look at like a top 10 list from 72, 74, 75, 76, and go look what the length of those songs, you know, and it's not what these are. So in my opinion, like they just have to we have to have other places to play things. Like we put our songs onto a video game, get your songs into a TV show, get your songs into like a different venue. Because there's different places that you can put your music. Like you can put them into games, you can put them into like, you know, YouTube videos. You can get them into different channels and different areas where these guys don't control it, and then you have a better shot at getting, you know, somebody into it. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to kind of build an audience on these other platforms, and there's always new ones coming out. I'm always like, yeah, just make sure you register your stuff with a professional organization. So if somebody starts putting your stuff in the film, that you get your money. Because that's the thing with artists. Like the history of art is all the blues guys got ripped off because they just signed, you know, in order to play. You know, Lightning Hopkins, all these guys, you know, Lead Belly. I'll sign it just so I can play, and then they don't get any money. You know. So like, be careful who you sign with. You know, I always tell people, and make sure you get your rights. Try to own your master. You know, make sure you get your publishing rights and your actual mechanical rights is very important as a musician. Whether you're getting hits or not, is like make sure you register all your material. You don't get taken advantage of.
I think it's very big nowadays, since we're so connected and everything. People can easily take your stuff if it really sounds good and they like it. You know, like people can find an artist that's just, you know, kind of young and dumb and doesn't know anything, and
especially with sampling, because because there's so many people sampling, and there's a lot of samplers that are like, oh, I know what I can sample. I'll sample all these SoundCloud artists that aren't registering their stuff. Right? And so then they can't really do anything to me when I get a big hit off of them, because they didn't register their work. So like,
and I registered my own. So like now that I own their stuff, you know.
Yeah, there's some people that will
my YouTube stuff.
Yeah, they registered your stuff, and then you can't play it because they took it and act like it was theirs. Right?
Yeah, I got strikes on my YouTube channel because it said that I took,
it was theirs.
Like my videos before theirs. Like, why you copy striking
people who just love mining. There's some producers that are very good at mining other people's work, and I guess their talent is knowing what goes together. But my opinion about that is kind of harsh, because I'm the guy that I build things from the sound wave. You know, I build my own sounds. I don't buy sound, I build my sounds, right? And so I build my own beats with my own drum machines. So if somebody steals one of my beats, then it acts like they did it. Like, you know, my stuff's registered, and they get pushed down pretty fast. It's just like, yeah, I don't really have too much patience for that. It's like, that's like, okay, like if I hear somebody use one of my things and I like what they did, then I might negotiate with them because they did something cool. It's like, okay, you did something cool, we could work something out. But like, if you just blatantly take it like Ice Ice Baby, you know, what they did with that song is like, that's not cool. You know, I don't like that. I don't think that's cool. But so have you been doing any like live streaming? Do you do live streaming at all?
I haven't. Like I recently just got this camera. I haven't had any time because I've been working at Amazon for the past year, and like first I was working overnights, and that screwed up everything. And now I'm on day shift, but I'm still working like 10 hours a day, and then they call like mandatory extra time like almost every week. So I haven't really had too much time to do the things I want to, especially like because like the times are like the weekends, you know, and that's usually when I get called into work. And it's like, but that's the time I want to be able to do stuff because it's the time everybody's home, so that way everybody can like actually view the live stream, you know. So, but I do it every once in a while, but like just a couple of painting videos on YouTube, and that's about it.
Yeah, because one thing we're always working on things, but we have a festival that we did in July, with the podcast guests. We had like 22 bands we had interviewed since 2018, all do like a half-hour set. And we called it the Peg Bedroom Producer Festival. And so we did it on this channel, and we did like a 3-day festival of guests that we had interviewed, and everybody did like a 30-minute set from wherever they had it. Some bands couldn't do live, so they had like YouTube videos that they produced ahead of time, but never really put out, and they ran those, or they gave us MP4. So we're doing it again in February 11th through the 13th, and we're booking bands. And so there's multiple ways to do it. Like, so if you can't get something live, you could do something over time and record something on YouTube and make it like a private video, and then we'll push it out. So let us know if you'd be interested in something like that, so we can work.
I might be able to throw some stuff together depending on how much time I have. It's like
it's not till February 11th.
It's kind of a hard one for shipping.
Well, if you can get it done before February 11th, then if you got like a 20-minute set, or even then, we had some guys that couldn't do 20 minutes; they did like 10. But we're trying to get at least 20 minutes for each band. But if you do 10, then you have it, then we could fit you in, because we're trying to fit as many bands as we can. So yeah, that's kind of cool. We just want to give independent bands another way to play, because people can't play, out at venues. And we're thinking next year we might do this even more. We'll do like artist showcase, where like if somebody wants to play 45 minutes, we might say, hey, Peg is actually sponsoring that you're doing a show, and you do the show through us. And we even have the ability to like do live tickets through Facebook events. So we could actually charge like $1 and see if people want to pay. And so we have a way to do that. We can schedule it and then have ticketed things. And we're actually trying to we have a band in the UK that we're going to work with us on trying to be the guinea pig to see if it works. We're looking at like a 50 cent to $1 ticket to just be able to see a half hour to an hour worth of your band playing. And we use this venue to do it. And we've got all kinds of cool things we can help people. We know how to help people do like a 3-camera shot. We've been doing our YouTube channel with OBS, virtual webcam. There's a tool that you can use for free that allow you to take all your webcams and have a 3-camera shot of your performance. If you had 3. But there's a lot of cool things, because people can't play in venues, and we want to give people like artists a way to have a platform to actually do their work and be safe, and then still have their fans interact.
That's the beautiful thing about the new modern world, is that like everything's shut down, but at least we still have communication. Like if this had happened 20 years ago, everything would be so screwed, because there would have been no way for us to have like the interaction that we have today with like being able to do calls like this with video and stuff like that, and be able to actually like have like live shows like you're talking about, and have some. I think
it's real important. It's important for people to see, not just talk to the bands, because I've been doing that, and I think that's cool. And I've been trying to give, bands a place to talk. But also, I said, well, if we can talk, we can play. And it's just a matter of sometimes making sure your audio interface has a good enough quality that people can, will listen to it. But I've been able to do it. We did one with 22 bands. We sound checked 22 bands, and we got them out there. So yeah, it's something we think is important. And because of what's going on nowadays, bands still can't play live. And this cool thing is we're playing from like 7 a.m. till 11 at night. So we're getting bands from like Norway and, Australia and Iceland to play in the morning, and then other bands play like, when it fits their time zone. So yeah, we can hit everybody whatever time, because we're doing 3 days, some bit in the schedule will fit your life.
I love it.
That's where we're hoping. And we'd love to have you play. If you got something we can do with it, we'd like to give the world give you a bigger platform so people can see your music and hear it,
Okay. I think I'd be down.
Yeah, I just think it's cool to do that. And it's like everybody should go out and check out your Parallel Lines Collide, which we've been running down below. And we always tell people, like, click the links to the artist that we bring to you here Not only click the links, but subscribe to their YouTube, subscribe to wherever they are, like it, follow it, download it, where you can buy it, buy it. Like if you like a YouTuber gamer, people give them tips. Musicians, for some reason, people forget that we put a lot of work into things and then we don't get a lot of results. So I would suggest if you give money to your favorite YouTuber, donate to your favorite musician by buying their material where it can be bought, buy their merch, download the material, like it, put it on a playlist, tell other people about it. That's what you do to support the bands you love. So is there anything you're working on into this year or next year, like the album you were talking about, like the EP maybe?
I've got several things that I'm working on. I have the one that's the heavy polyrhythm / drum and bass influenced one. I'm also working on. I'm part of this like a kind of occult magic community and stuff like that, and it's kind of like fun philosophy stuff. And I wanted to involve the little community. I'm still waiting for them to get back to me, but like each person does like kind of like they send me an audio clip of them like reading out an incantation or a spell or something like that, and then I'm gonna make it into an ambient album and call it Spellbook.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Right, and like a lot of them are supposed to be like, yeah, like they're gonna be like more dream oriented and stuff like that, and like stuff for people to like put on for them to kind of like go to sleep or something like that and listen to like help facilitate lucid dreaming or whatever, because that's one of my favorite things to do. I like sleeping a lot, so.
I think a lot of ideas come from dreams. I would say like I love having my bedroom studio because I would just wake up from a dream and I'll go run to my notebook and then run to my synth, put my headphones on and say, something came to me. And
for real, I've had several songs. Just 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, I'm like, I know this is a great idea. And I just run to my computer and I manically like make an entire song right before I go to work.
I think a lot of artists do that because I've talked to artists like they were saying. I talked to this lady and she was out and she just voice memoed something that came to her like, out of the ether, and then she was like, she said it was like one of the best songs she ever did. And she said it kind of came to her like a complete thought, like the whole like lyric line, like the main part of the song. This somehow, and the thing is, what I think happens as musicians, we're kind of like a sponge. Right. And we pick up all of our influences. We pick up all the stuff we read. And it seems like it came out of nowhere, but somehow in your artistic mind, you're kind of putting things together. And then sometimes like, boom, it comes out. And then it's like, oh. And then the thing is, you got to know when to not ignore it. And kind of take it. Like Hendrix was famous. I'll tell a story. Like Hendrix was with the Isley Brothers and he was recording and they was doing their song. And then suddenly something came to him that wasn't theirs. It was his, right? And he went and put it down in their recording session, right? And they say, what are you doing? It has nothing to do with our song, right? He said, well, it came out of somewhere and I had to catch it. I'm sorry, but I didn't want to lose it. So I had to catch it. So I put it down on your tape. And they're like, you're spending our money. But yeah, I think sometimes artists, we got to do what we got to do.
For real, especially when they like inspiration hits. Sometimes it's like you're far away from anything. Like I'm like grocery shopping or something like that, and I get like a melody or like a kind of like a little rhyme in my head, and I'm like, shit, I got to write that down. And so like I pull out my phone, got to put something down real quick, just so that way I don't forget it. Because like some of my best stuff, and like I've noticed from other artists, some of their best stuff is just stuff that hit them out of nowhere, that their brain just kind of like eventually put everything together, like you were saying, and just kind of gave them like a little piece, and they're like, oh, this is something that's really good. But also like that idea of like it comes out as a complete thought almost already. Like that song, the "Missing You, My Love" one that you played, that one, like I sat down and I just wrote it all in like 2 hours, just because like I had already like it was just in my head already, and I didn't have to like try to figure out like, what do I want that to sound like. It's like, oh, I know exactly what I need right now for this sound. But then like most of the time I'll be on my computer like searching for hours, just like, I'm gonna try this. That doesn't sound good, like there'll be just hours and hours of nothing, and then one day just a complete song in an hour.
It's weird because I like to do a lot of stream of consciousness stuff because I'm like into Dylan, and
Oh
Lou
yeah, I
Reed.
love it.
And what I read about them is like Dylan would have his typewriter, he'd bring it to him, right? When he's like Big Pink with the band, he'd have his typewriter, and he's like, he'd get like an idea, somebody like to say a phrase, and then Dylan would take it and then do a whole song off like one phrase or something he
Mm-hmm.
read in a book, and then he would suddenly just type it out. He'd sit there his typewriter and bang it out, and then go run downstairs with Robbie Robertson and all the big guys and just like put it out. And so I kind of got into that. And like one day I was doing something and I came up with this idea. It's like, oh, people say that they're falling in love, and I came up with this idea. What if you said you were ascending instead of falling, right? So I came up with this idea called ascending into darling mode. And then I said, oh,
Ooh, I
that's the
like
idea,
that.
right? And then I just had my open mic and had all my synths, and I just like opened up a track, opened up a drum on my Moog drum machine, and I just freeformed it. And I actually put it down as like the first take. Like I just somehow I just took that idea and I just free flowed it for like 10 minutes, and then I cut it down to like 5, and I released it. And it did pretty well. And it's like I didn't really overthink it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's as I get older, I like to write my songs that way. If I could just kind of put it into one session and get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff I try to really micromanage, but I really like it when it comes together like that.
It just makes everything a lot easier because then you're not worried about like, oh, this, should I put a major third here? Will that sound better than switching to minor, or like instead of just trying to
Yeah, if you overthink a
micromanage
song,
it
you
from
tend to
the
wreck it.
music theory side.
You tend to wreck a song. From my opinion, what happens, like the more takes you do on a song, by the time you get to take 40, you have totally lost the original intent of the song, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're at take 1 through 5, you're probably closer to what the song was really about. But if you get obsessive about trying to make something perfect, and I would always tell as a producer, like, even if you've got a mistake in take 1 through 5, if that's a little micro mistake, go back to the 70s, like a famous producer, Todd Rundgren, right, on his song, Hello, It's Me. If you listen to that song, it's got errors in it through the whole thing. It's got timing errors. It's got tape cuts, but it's such a good song, right, that he didn't overdo it. He kind of just
Mm-hmm.
let it be on the whatever version he put out, but he didn't obsess about it too much. He kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
leave it in there. Because like the happy accident, like in the 70s, and a lot of songs are happy accidents. I mean, even thinking like Keith Richards playing, it can't be really clocked that good. If you try to clock Keith Richards, like he's playing like all over the place, and it's very hard to kind of tighten him into a DAW type of situation. But like, why would you? Because it just
Mm-hmm.
sounds great. You know what I mean? So I try to tell people that some people can't be put into a DAW. Keith Richards is
Mm-hmm.
one.
Very true.
Like Keith Moon, it doesn't work. Like you kind of got to play it with them. There's some people you actually got to play with them. You can't DAW it. You got to actually go and live record it.
Yeah, they play by feel, not by like a quantization type thing. As much as I
It's a
love
feel.
quantization to make my stuff play a little bit better, it's like you lose a little bit of humanity when you put everything into that grid shape,
Well, you get really catchy stuff that's really cool, and I understand why it's great. But I am a big believer in the happy accident, like live feel it, and all the micro errors that are in happy accidents. They're in classic music. It's part of that thing. It's like we're human, so there are going to be timing
Mm-hmm.
errors. There are going to be like key change errors, but sometimes it works for that song. And the problem
Mm-hmm.
today is if you get all these producers that think you got to get so clean that there's no accident, I think that's taking the wrong approach, because like music
Mm-hmm.
is a human activity. It's a human art form. And if you let the machine drive it, then you
It
kind of
loses
lose
the
some of the
soul.
humanity. Yeah, you lose the soul of it. I mean, funk is really like, if you get into funk, I mean, funk is like, it is kind of, it's like jazz, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a little off. It's off on purpose. That's why it's
Yeah,
funky.
it's fun. Yeah.
That's why it is. That's what it is. But yeah, we really love having you on the show. And again, like we have people come on multiple times. We'd like you to be part of the festival in February 11th through the 13th. We'll talk about that. And we're going to push this out so everybody sees it, and we'll give you the links. And enjoyed having you on.
All right, I enjoyed being on.
Thank you very much, and everybody go out and check out Schmidt Show, and you're on all the platforms. They're on this link that we have here. You can check out that link and check out the new material. Check out the video we showed. We do have the hyperlink for the YouTube video that we did show. We have the hyperlink for your Destroy Kid stuff, and just check your profile on all the platforms that you're on. And we appreciate you, Schmidt Show, being on the program, and we'll talk to you again.
See you later, man.